Doug Sterne is an old friend, and I am so happy to have you here today, Doug. Doug is Vice President of Audio Sales for Pandora Media. Doug joined Pandora in 2008 to head up new opportunities in audio sales. He directed the company's efforts to simplify the evaluation and purchase of audio ads, introducing Pandora to the ad industry's most popular media buying software platforms. Prior to Pandora, Doug served in executive management positions for industry-leading media companies like CBS and Clear Channel Radio. Please welcome Doug Sterne.
Thank you. I'm petrified. I have to follow two storytellers.
Well, you know, you better get your stories ready and get your stories straight.
Here we go.
I want to dovetail the previous conversation because I know you had some comments about the Meeker study, and also Robert had some points about interaction with mobile ads, and this is an area you know all too well, so go.
Well, sure, and thanks for bringing it up. Robert, thank you. That was awesome. Very interesting. What Mark is referring to is I saw the report actually in the last 24 hours. And what's interesting and will be a continued data point that financial analysts point to quite frequently is the share of media usage versus share of media spend. And I would tell you, and I'll actually dovetail this back to audio, but first things first, that's pretty well known that mobile at this stage is really continues to be a nascent industry from an advertising standpoint. There's still so much being learned about how it's being consumed. But just like radio, which, and I've lost track of the number, I want to say it enjoys about 11% of media consumption versus a 9% of an ad pie, revenue pie. I think the numbers that Mary Meeker cites are mobile today enjoys about 10% of all media consumption, but a little under 2% of the media spend, but it's that new. And how I dovetail that back to where I think you were heading, Mark, was that, you know, even though you probably think it was my charm and good looks and art of persuasion that got me my job at Pandora, it was actually the fact that the smartphone app came out in the summer of 2008. Gosh, 6-8 months after I had been pounding on their door, trying to convince them that they ought to look at the website, you know, with a radio lens. And lo and behold, once the user adoption rate like accelerated on smartphones, they saw that in fact. They were going to have to make audio an important part, and now today, you know, really represents our core value proposition in terms of ad products. And everything we know about efficacy on mobile is a multiple when you look at it through the eye of audio. That when audio is served either what we call naked with, you know, no visual graphic.
That makes it sound a lot better.
It definitely sounds more sexy. You know, the brand awareness studies that we've conducted show that the brand awareness lift is significant and substantially more than just a display ad. So I guess that's the only point I want to make is it's still early. We see it. We used to say it's the bottom of the first, maybe it's the top of the second, but we are very aware of the fact that there is a conversation going on about the commoditization of mobile display ads, but in the end, you know, audio is the secret sauce, the killer ad on a mobile device.
Well, that's what I was trying to get at, because it seems to me like it has that potential to circumvent all the limitations. I mean, it's, you know, the downside of audio is that there are no pictures, and the upside of audio is that there are no pictures.
Right. But what I would add to that is, I mean, when you think about a native environment to get served an audio ad, if half of all radio is listened to in the car, for example, and we know, as people have been discussing all morning long, that radio and audio remains a very powerful medium. There's no reason to think, you know, that won't continue. I think the distribution platforms might look different, but to the end user, it's all audio. It's all entertainment or information or information about brands.
Well, I was going to ask you about that too. Is it frustrating for you to hear people kind of, say, well, that's not a station, that's, a music service? I mean, that's got to be frustrating for you on the inside, as well as a user of content.
Yeah, no, frustration, sure. I mean, we all deal with frustration.
Well, it's not. I doubt it coheres to your thinking.
No, I mean, we launched from strictly in the advertising marketplace. Mm-hmm. We launched with the belief that Pandora is just like radio, mm-hmm. That it provides an entertainment value, and we try to be ubiquitous. We're as many places as we can possibly be, and we try to make the user interface super easy. I mean, I remember Joe Kennedy used to say, the first, or I should say, the previous CEO would oftentimes say that radio's value proposition, its best value proposition, is that it's free and it's easy to operate, and you know what you're going to get, mm-hmm. right? And that's essentially the model that we've really pursued in the world and through the eye of a radio ad buyer, okay, or an advertiser through the brand itself. And I guess I don't, words, sticks and stones. You know what I mean?
I understand.
We do believe that because we're engaged in conversations with people about radio advertising quite frequently, though it's not our only revenue stream. Mm-hmm. If you want to call me a radio station, fantastic. If you want to call me a music service, fantastic. But in the end, we really are operating a business model that's very similar to radio.
Right. How much more effective, or is it more effective, audio only versus audio and other elements that people are able to interact with, visually, clickable, et cetera?
I mean, I would tell you that the simplest response is it's always a function of what the objective is, the marketing right. objective. When you combine sight, sound, and motion and all of the elements of rich media, I mean, you can garner, if you're using, say, click-through as a proxy for effectiveness, mm-hmm. or brand awareness lift in a study, in a mm-hmm. post-campaign study, you can use all of these elements to garner a richer outcome. But I will revert back to my original position, which is audio remains, the core value proposition in the advertising world for Pandora.
Is that the most powerful of the pieces based on the outcomes that your studies show?
It clearly is. And you touched on it. I mean, as we continue to move toward migrating into the dashboards of cars, mm-hmm. right? Either through wireless Bluetooth connection or actually natively embedded in the dashboard. It's clear that audio is going to be the medium that upon which Pandora transacts mm-hmm. Ad revenue.
What impact has online radio in general had, and I guess Pandora in particular, on audio as a force among agencies? We had a conversation about that, and I'm interested in how you think audios think different, or how do you think agencies think differently about audio now in the presence of online radio and Pandora?
Well, I think one thing that online radio has done is draw attention back to audio as an advertising art form, that it's re-emerging, that it's there is some sex to it again, that in the days of yore, when you would reach out to an ad agency like Rick's to talk about an idea or a concept. Most of the time we would be having conversations with media people. Mm-hmm. Those are important conversations, obviously, to have, and typically they end up coming last. But today we find ourselves in front of creatives, and largely because they want to know more and more about what the tools are that they can use to do anything as simple as enrich or improve the key performance indicators of a simple radio campaign, or to execute on a sonic branding strategy like Robert was talking about earlier.
Let's talk about that. I mean, how do the kind of the transmedia opportunities of online radio open up opportunities creatively for agencies?
So that's a good question. It's kind of a softball. I really appreciate it.
I want to know the answer.
No, what I was going to say is that, Robert, where are you? There you are. Touched on one of my favorite and really one of the earliest uses of multimedia on our platform with Toyota, and that concept of a branded radio station is how we've productized it. Allowed them not just to curate music that they felt was consistent with the brand that they wanted to project, but they also inserted content that they created. Interviews with artists, previews of new models, 30 and 15-second radio commercials. So you can see that they looked at this somewhat holistically and decided they would jump in and take advantage of all of the rich media offerings that existed, right? And just as a follow-up to that, and I don't know, Rick, if you asked the question, you did. It was, how big do you have to be to take advantage of that kind of a strategy? Kind of anticipating this might come up, I flipped out an email about an hour and a half ago to one of my favorite sellers in Chicago and said, what's hot in Chicago around branded radio? And they talked about a jeweler there, a retailer with 4 locations, right? Only in Chicago, who's launched a branded station called, it's called Last Dance Radio. And they're trying to sell diamonds and all of the visuals. I got goosebumps because I gave my daughter away last year. But it's, they're trying to sell diamonds to brides. And they've had a lot of success with it. So anyway,
what's the next evolution of that? I mean, branded stations, it seems to me, I get that, and that's not new, although there are new things to do with it. But what's next in terms of kind of content marketing for Pandora?
Well, I can certainly, the story that Robert just told resonated with me about Kraft producing a magazine, right? And it seems to me, and I actually am hearkening back to something that happened 15, 16 years ago. But radio programmers and those that execute on a radio strategy are the experts when it comes to creating a sound environment that connects with people emotionally. And I know that brands, fast food restaurant that will remain nameless, but I think it launched in San Diego years ago, was looking to create an audio environment to attract people in to eat fast food late at night, And to me, it seems as if that's not too far-fetched to think that a brand might be able to take advantage of a custom audio landscape, backdrop, whatever you want to call it. I know that at Pandora, this is something we do through a licensing agreement with another party. It has less to do with branding and more to do with distribution of a customized sound in a retail business. But I don't think that's what you were asking about.
Let's talk about targeting a little bit. Tell me how that continues to evolve. You take a look at the targeting on Facebook, and it's evolving all the time. How is Pandora's targeting evolving, and how does that contribute to monetization for you?
So the evolution, I suppose it needs to start with the foundation, and really what ends up being one of from a media standpoint, one of Pandora's core value propositions, which is because our user is a logged in user, right? It's one thing that we already know they've registered with a zip code and a birth year and their gender. But beyond that, we also know a lot about what they're listening to and what they're thumbing up and down and the stations they like and don't like. And with the advent of big data, and I know it's been touched upon a little bit. We really have a valuable first-party data set that I think you'll start to see. I know we're exploring now, but we are able to segment our audience based on some predictive analytics and matching massive warehouses of data with our user data. We keep it very private. We're very sensitive about the privacy issues. It's probably why at this stage we're really working at a rudimentary level, making those kind of audience segmentations available to our advertisers. But I think that's the direction that you're going to continue to see, not just Pandora, but in a connected world, both online and on mobile devices. That data is super important to marketers and ad agency media departments.
Data in general is becoming more important. And we're not talking just ratings, right?
No, definitely not just ratings. I mean, you think about why is the data so important to Pandora? Well, because the user experience, right, the personalization of a radio experience is all hinged on 40 million thumb ups or downs in that the genome uses to inform the algorithms that pick your next song.
How do you keep, I know if I sign up for Pandora in San Diego and I move in 2 years, how do you keep registration information fresh?
Oh, people don't move. No. So I do get asked that question quite a bit, and
I'll think of a more original one.
No, that's a good one. And I'm glad you asked it because I think that there's a lot of noise in the system about that. So some of you may know that internet radio is measured by a company called Triton Digital. I think they are even sponsoring the event today.
Yes, they are.
That's a good thing. Shout out to Triton. So we are one of their subscribers to their measurement service, both from a national standpoint, and they have a local product. That local measurement product was accredited by the MRC. The methodology for measuring online radio was accredited, I want to say, in March of this year. But what was not really, written about a ton was the implementation of their methodology, combined with Pandora's registration data, was also accredited, and we had to go through quite a bit of work to earn that accreditation, to meet their standard, which involved and included introducing new controls so that when we see a registered user that has a zip code that looks like it's lapsed because it doesn't necessarily match up with an IP address or a UID address on a phone, we ping them, we notify them and say, hey, have you moved? Would you like to update your data now? And that in and of itself, and introducing that measure, has I think solved the issue of advertisers being comfortable now. Being comfortable with the accuracy. Having that validation is helpful.
One quick question on measurement, then I want to open it up. What does the advertising market want in terms of measurement, and what will it take for them to get it if they don't have it now?
So what we hear, right, in the advertising market is they want the ability to look at internet radio, not just Pandora, but they'd like to see the entire universe of audio measured side by side. That if an account team and a creative team and a strategic team have put together a media plan, a multimedia plan, that includes the use of audio, right, they want to be able to evaluate all of the places that audio that they're creating. They want audio to be equal in their eyes. Correct. For buying purposes. Correct. And what was the second half of that question? Well, and what does it take? What will it take for that to happen if it isn't already happening? So, it's a great question. I think right now, through a lot of work that we have done at Pandora and that Triton has done with the media buying software companies like MediaOcean and Strata. These are the companies that agencies largely, most ad agencies use to transact media purchases, not just in radio, but across other media, that it can be done, but it's still not a seamless experience, right? And I think when it becomes profitable to the measurement services that measure broadcast radio, to blend the two, I think that perhaps that's when you'll see what the marketplace is asking for.
Okay. Questions from the audience. I expect we'll have more than a few. Let's go on the end there if we can.
We've talked a lot today about content. We've talked a lot about content marketing, content creation, curation. It seems to me that Pandora really only falls under the concept of curation, and you guys aren't really creating a lot of content. It's just music, and there are some other portions that are there. I'm sort of interested to understand where the rest of that kind of falls in line, particularly for the crew that's here, but also in general, you know, in terms of you guys being competitive across the space with whether it be talk or news or traffic or whatever, comedy.
What our brand is about is the user experiences brand. So what I would say is that our value proposition is somewhere in between, because clearly we're not creating the music or the comedy. We're paying for it. But what we are doing is creating that personalized experience, right, that allows the listener to customize what they want to hear, when they want to hear it, in a radio sense. Not on demand, but certainly we're trying to create an experience that allows the person to sit back and say, wow, that's awesome. That's exactly what I wanted to hear.
It's a question about measurement. Nielsen says that in the PPM markets, Pandora does not show because the signal is not encoded. Is there any reason why you wouldn't want to be in there?
So the simple answer is Nielsen doesn't measure Pandora.
Right.
And
they can't, they say.
Can't lives on Won't Street. So what I would tell you is, but what I tell you is that we are super happy and satisfied. Actually believe that the measurement that and the methodology measuring Pandora today has accreditation in 276 markets across the country. And we think that the work that has gone into developing that, not just what we think, but the marketplace is accepting it and seeing it as valid and reliable. And in the end, while that's good and has import around the first conversations you have in a media department, what's really driving our success are the stories that people are telling, you know, about success that they're having with our platform.
The first part of your answer was very good, thank you. The second part was beautiful. Thank you again.
Okay.
Doug, you said that Pandora is a radio station. Now, I spent a little time in radio, and I know you're not a radio station, because radio stations have 22 minutes of commercials, sell a lot of penis enhancement products. And so the question really is, and it is a question, is part of Pandora's success the limitation of commercial content? And it appears to me that there's some quality control about who the advertisers are and how the message is going to be presented, so it doesn't interfere with the atmosphere that you're trying to correct. Number one, am I right about that? And number two, why don't commercial broadcasters take a clue from your success?
Well, you'll have to ask them about the second question. But I appreciate the first question. So it's really interesting. If this bores you, I find it interesting that when I first arrived at Pandora and the idea of introducing an audio commercial into a music stream that had been curated by the person, right, by the very user, it was like, who is this guy they brought in here? Don't they understand this is going to ruin everything? So believe me, it's been looked at and examined through a critical eye. Inventory loads, interruptions, et cetera. It's a life that we've all lived, right? But what I would say is the beauty of the platform is we do have pretty much instantaneous feedback. There's a feedback loop. We know pretty much in real time, whether people are continuing to listen or not. And further, what I'd say is, all of our financial models, business models, whatever you want to call it, that's not about the user experience. Now it's about running the business, are all attainable, achievable with lower spot loads, right, than what we in the terrestrial business were used to. Do I think they'll always be this low? No. I think there's a fair value exchange. We just hope to God we never abuse that perception by the listener.
Thank you for the question, and thank you, Doug Sterne, very much, Doug. Thank you so much.